how you doing? Justin here for the first in my little duet series, and this one is a lesson I call a capo for two. So basically the idea is if two guitar players want to jam together playing a song, they both know their open chords, but they're not sure about doing any other fancy stuff like bar chords or triads or whatever. This is a wonderful way to get two guitar players playing the same thing in different ways, and it sounds wicked. It's used on loads of classic amazing records, like all over the place. And it sounds great just in a duet environment if you're playing just two acoustic guitars together. It works with electric guitar as well. In fact, a really sweet one is acoustic guitar strumming the open chords and electric guitar playing the capo thing. That can sound real sweet. So it's not only for acoustic guitar, but the classic version of it, I suppose, will be two acoustic guitars playing together. In order to make this work properly, there's a couple of foundation things that we need to cover. The most important one is a brief look at this thing called the cage system. Now, we're going to go into much more detail on this way down the line in intermediate level stuff. But it's a good idea to get just a fundamental idea of what the cage system is and what it means. Basically, there are only 5 ways of playing chords on the guitar, and they are C, A, G, E, and D. I'm sure if you've done my beginner's course, you're familiar with those chords, C, A, G, E, and D. Obviously, you put them together, you get the acronym CAGED, okay? Doesn't really make a whole lot of difference other than that. But just to give you an example of how that works on the instrument. So let's start off here with a C chord. The notes here in this chord are C, E, G, C, and E. It's an open C chord and it's a C shape. We get the name of the shape from the chord in the open position. So this is a C chord in open position, so this is a C shape, but you will see later on we can play this different ways. Now the notes here are C, E, G, C, and E. There's another way of playing a C chord, which is using an A shape. Now the notes here are C, G, C, E, and G. It's the same notes, but can you see it's kind of an A shape, but I'm using my finger as a capo at the 3rd fret, and it sounds like a C. There's a C, there's a C. We can also use a G shape. Now I'm using my first finger as a capo at the 5th fret. You can hear it's still a C. Slightly different, because the top note sounds different. We can do this. This is another C chord now. This is using an E shape. It looks like an open E chord. E shape, and we could also do a D shape. Then you can see an open D there. Now using a capo, that would mean we're playing a C chord using a C shape, pop the capo on at the 3rd fret, play an A chord, and we've still got a C sound, but we're using an A shape. Move the capo up to the 5th fret, we can use a G shape, still a C chord, still the sound is a C major chord, we're just using a G shape. Move it up to the 8th fret, you can play an E shape, E shape, still sounds like a C. And lastly, we have a D shape, still sounds like a C chord. So like I said, we're going to go into the cage system in a lot more detail later on, but that should give you a rough idea that you can hear these. They're all the same. They're all the same chord. They're all the same sound. If one person's playing a C open C chord, you could play any one of those at the same time and it'll sound beautiful, right? So the other thing that's really important before we start getting into actually how to use it is knowing where the root notes are in each open shape. That's really important. If you don't get that, none of this is going to make any sense. So let's go through and have a look at each of those in order again now. So for the C chord, there's the C note. So it's on the 5th string. It's kind of on the, I'd say it's kind of forward. The chord shape is kind of behind the root note. So make a little bit more sense later why that's important. But the root note's on the 5th string and the chord shape is kind of behind. Okay, if we looked at the A shape, I'm going to do it here. Rather than doing it as the open chord, I'm going to do it here. You see, there's the root note. See, on the A chord, open A, it's the open string. As a bar chord, you can see straight away that there's the root note. Again, it's on the 5th string, but this time the chord is in front. So you see with a C shape, if I do a C shape like this, there's the root note and the chord is behind it. There's 5th note root and the chord is in front of it. Okay, so for a C chord, bass note is on the 5th string, chord behind. For an A shape, the root note is on the 5th string but the chord's in front. For the D chord, the root note is on the 4th string. For an E chord, the root note is on the thicker string, the 6th string, and the chord is in front. And with a G chord, the root note is on the thicker string and the chord is kind of behind. The rest of the shape is behind. It would definitely be if you did a bar chord version of it, which is a pig. And by the way, people don't normally play this. It's well uncomfortable and not just not very practical. But you can see that the majority of the chord shape is kind of behind the root note. So knowing where the root note is in each of the chord shapes, absolutely super essential. If you're any of that's even slightly like, well, I'm not 100% sure about that, go and check out over on the website. There'll be some chord diagrams there very clearly showing the root note and the direction of the chord relative to the root note, which is important. Now, when you've got a chord progression and you're trying to figure out one guitar is playing this and the other one's going to play that, this is easy. The first part, the open chords, you should know that already. But it's then calculating where you can play the other chords that makes a difference. Now, if there are loads of chords in the song, if you're doing American Pie or, I don't know, any of those songs where there's loads and loads of chords, it gets pretty difficult. So I don't recommend you'd start there because sometimes you're going to need to use little cheats or sometimes even a bar chord. So I would start simple. Easy 3-chord songs is a really good place to start with this. So find some... any that use all major chords are going to be easier starters as well, because minor chords pose some other problems, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But let's start off keeping it simple with the major chords. Now, the way I've always preferred to do it is to do it by trial and error and find whatever capo position I could do for the first chord and then see if the other ones work. Because sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. There is another one. I'm going to give you a chart later on where you can actually go down. It's a bit quicker and easier to do it on a chart. But I feel like you get more out of doing it by trial and error and just trying to figure it out, because you learn about the process, you learn your root notes, you learn about the chord shapes, and you might discover some stuff that's really cool that you might not have done if you were just using your head too much, because hopefully you'll be using your ears. So let's take a really simple progression of G, C, and D. And let's just see what happens, how we could explore finding where to put the capo and what the chords would be once we put the capo on. So our chords are G, C, and D. Okay, so they're the root notes. We've got G, C, and open D. Now the first one, G. Okay, so we've got a G chord. We know that there's the root note and the chord shape's kind of behind. So we're almost certainly, we remember there was one with the 6th string root with the chord in front. Okay, so that means that we can pop a capo on the 3rd fret. And we remember that the chord shape with the root note on the thicker string and the chord shape above it was E. So there we've got our G chord. Now the second chord that we had was a C chord. So now what we need to do is find a C note. Now if you don't know the notes on the fretboard, you got a little bit of homework to do. You should have been doing that. If you've been learning your power chords and following along with my beginner series, you should know the root notes on the thicker string by now. You're starting to see why that was important. So where's a C anywhere around there? Hopefully you recognized, oh, there was a C here on the 5th string at the 3rd fret, which is under the capo now. Now, we can't play behind the capo, obviously, so the chord shape that had a root note on the 5th string with the chord shape above was A shape. So if we play an A shape now, it's going to sound like a C chord. Okay? You with me? Now, so we're okay. We've got this is our E shape, but this is making a G chord. This is our A shape. That's making a C chord. The last chord that we had was a D. Now, where's a D note around here somewhere? Any ideas? Yeah. If you said here, you would be completely correct. Now, we had a chord shape behind, which was the C shape, but that's not going to work because the capo's in the way. And if we go ahead, we'd have a bar chord. So actually, this doesn't work. Having the capo on the 3rd fret works for 2 of the chords, but it doesn't work for the 3rd one. Now, there is a cheat there. If you end up with this 2 frets above the capo on the 5th string, sometimes you could use a dominant 7th. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. You have to have a listen to it. Sometimes it'll work great, sometimes it won't. So try it and see if you can substitute what would have been a normal D for a D7, which would use a B7 shape, which is a nice open chord grip. Like I said, you just got to try it. And this is where I think trial and error and listening is a really good idea. But if you're just going to stick with straight open chords, 3rd fret doesn't work. So we need another type of G. Really what we're looking for is G notes as we kind of head up the fretboard now. So there was a G here, there was a G here, the thicker string, the 3rd fret. There's also a G here at the 10th fret, but that seems a bit far away. The other G that we've got is going to be the 5th fret on the 4th string. Now, whenever you've got an E shape like that as a shortcut for this, the next shape is going to be a D 2 frets up. So if we just move the capo 2 frets up and play a D, we've got another way of playing the G. Okay, so oftentimes you'll find that this one will be easy to find because it's got the root note on the thicker string and you're familiar with that. Many people, not just you, are less familiar with the notes on the 4th string. So if you found this one, bump it up 2 frets and pop a D chord down. Okay, and there's our G. Now the other 2 chords that we needed were a C and a D. Now, C chord. So around here on the thickest 2 strings, is there a C note? Hopefully you went, yeah, there's one there. The 8th fret. So obviously we're not going to go forward of it because we'd have a bar chord, but we can go behind it. We got a G chord. Well, hey, following along so far, hopefully. And then we've got a D chord. Now there was a D note around here anywhere. Yep. Okay, 5th string, 5th fret is the note D. 5th string with a chord forward of the root note is A. So now we've got our G, C, D. We're actually playing the shape of D, G, and A, but the chords sound like, and I could jam along with, G, C, and D. Following me so far? Okay. We already said, I mentioned that there was another G note here. Now, if we could just pop the capo straight on there and see what happens, but we've got to remember as well that some chords fall behind, and we had a shape that falls behind. Now, if you put your 3rd finger there like you're doing a C chord, because you remember your 3rd finger was on that root note, right, of the C shape when you played down there was your root note. So you put your 3rd finger there and go, oh yeah, okay, well there's my C chord. The capo must go here. Okay, because it goes just behind, like the nut is just behind the 1st finger. So there's our C shape. There's another G chord. Well, hey, we found it. Now, the next chord we wanted was, we had a G and then a C. C note was here. Now, we definitely can't go behind now. Now, forward is an F chord. So you could play an F. So we've got C, F. Now, if you're struggling with F bar chord, because it is a bar chord and it is further up the neck, you could just use a little one as well, or try an F major 7. That might work if you're struggling with any of those. Remember, F major 7 very often works. And then we had a D chord, so we're looking for a D note around here somewhere. There is a D. 10th fret on the thicker string, so the chord shape going behind is a G chord. Okay, so now we'd have, that's a G chord. That is a C chord, and that is a D chord, right? I'm showing you a pretty comprehensive look at this. You would normally just want one other way to play it. You wouldn't have to learn all of them, but I think it's a good idea to experiment, learn about how these things work. Hopefully you do too. So now we've gone to the next G, just in case you're wondering. There was the C chord, there's the G root note. We remember that there was a chord forward of the G as well. So if we pop the capo there, down at the 10th fret, there's our G root note. The chord shape with the 5th string root with the chord shape above was the A shape. It's a little bit clammy up here. So there's a G chord that way. The other chords that we needed were a C. Now, the C note is here on the 4th string. This is a D shape here. Now again, if you're struggling to remember where that root note is on the 4th string, remember it's 2 strings down and 2 frets up from the root note on the thicker string. That's the easiest way to remember the 4th string root note. So if you're trying to find that, that should be helpful. So that's a D chord, a D shape making a C chord. And then lastly, we have an E shape, which would make a D chord because there's our root note on the thickest string. So again, to play G, C, and D, we're using A shape, D shape, and E shape, but a capo at the 10th fret. Now, I know at this point some of you probably got a headache and you're like, oh my God, how am I ever going to be able to do this? This is far, far, far too complicated. Why am I doing this JustinGuitar course? He's making all of these complicated things. I just want to play guitar. What I just did was like the whole big complete thing. You don't need that. You just need one other pattern. If you want to be a super pioneer explorer of this stuff, then sure. Every time you learn a song and you learn a chord progression, see how many different ways you can play it with loads of different capo positions. But that's not what's necessary most of the time. Most of the time you just want to find one that works, and then that's it. You're good to go. If you want to try other ones, you can, but I think it's a good idea to be able to find one fairly quickly. And to aid that, I've made a capo chart for you, which shows the open chords at the top, and then what shape you would play with each of the capos, different capo positions underneath it. So most times you're going to look at the top of the chart and go, well, here's the 2 or 3 chords that I need for this song, or maybe 4 chords. Here's the chords at the top. Just search down and try and find where all of those columns have got something, have got a chord shape. Because obviously a lot of them won't have, because they're the positions where you'd need some bar chords. More advanced guitar players, of course, can use bar chords and integrate bar chords into it. That is something that a lot of people do. I've done it loads of times, and it's not something to be scared of. You just need to be confident with your bar chords, which if you're looking at this video as part of my course, you're in your kind of advancing beginner kind of level, so we haven't got to bar chords yet. If you know your bar chords, you can do a bit of further experimentation there. The chart will be easy to use if you just follow it carefully. To start off with, just maybe do this example now and look at G, C, and D. Find those chords at the top and then just gradually work your way down until you can see where they fit, and then try putting the capo down and listening and playing along. Then maybe try some other 3 chord things and see where they fit. Like I said, it won't always work this. Sometimes you'll find chords that in open position fine, but there's just not a capo position that works in this way without playing bar chords. That happens, right? So it's not you can't do it every time. It's just a cool trick to try out. As you get better and you've got your bar chords under your belt, then you can do it any time at all, because you won't be phased by having to pop a bar chord in here or there. But at this stage, just you're looking for songs that you can do it to, which most easy 2, 3, 4 chord songs you'll be okay with. So the chart will be very hopefully helpful. Download it from the website. If you're over on YouTube, you'll find it in the resources link, little download button, common icon that you'll find. Click on that and then you'll find any PDF resources for this or any other lesson over on the site that has these kind of extra downloads, and of course it'll be as part of the lesson content as well. So there's one more very important thing that we need to discuss, and that's minor chords. So hopefully most of you are familiar with those 5 major chord shapes that we have: C, A, G, E, and D. And you've probably noticed that of the minor chords, we only have A minor, D minor, and E minor, that we never had a C minor or a G minor open chord shape. They're maybe slightly possible, but they're really complicated, awkward fingerings. The G one is just going to end up being essentially a bar chord anyway. So that is one of the major restrictions. If you start playing with a lot of minor chords, you're going to find that the capo trick works even less because of the lack of C minor and G minor open chord shapes. All it means is that you're going to end up having to use bar chords later on down the line once you've learned bar chords. So definitely this trick is going to work mostly where you've maybe only got one minor chord. Often you'll find that what we call the 1, 5, 6, 4, so the chord progressions like a G, D, E minor, C kind of chord progressions you might find work pretty well. But otherwise, if you've got lots of minor chords going in there, or lots of chords generally, you are going to find this capo trick a little bit difficult. So just be aware of that as well. So when it comes actually time to now do this, the best way to do it is with a jam buddy. There's just no question about it. Finding another musician that you can actually jam with and talk this through and explore it together is the best way to do it. I send people off to do this on workshops all the time. It is the best way, because nearly always some people get some parts of this and other people get other parts of this. Obviously, I'm doing my best to explain the whole thing to you, but you're probably going to find there are some areas where you're just a bit like not sure about the chord shape behind or forward of the fret, but that kind of stuff. If you've got 2 brains working on the same thing, you're probably going to find it easier, and you can actually do it straight away. You can try playing it, you can explore it, you can try putting the capos in other places. You could both have a capo. Oh, there's an idea. Using that example we had with the G and the C, maybe somebody has a capo at the 3rd fret, somebody has a capo at the 10th fret. That might be an interesting place. Like, just explore it. Don't be afraid of it. You are going to have to do a bit of mathsy calculating of this sort of stuff, right? So if you're really afraid of that, maybe this isn't for you. But I think that it's such a beautiful technique for jamming and such a cool trick. If you're playing with somebody, and they're playing at a party and they got a little song going on with some chords, with a bit of practice, you'll go, yeah, I think I can do this with a capo at the 5th fret, and off you go. And it sounds so much nicer than two guitars playing the same thing the same way all the time. Okay? Now, I'm also going to give you on the website a couple of all-time classic examples where you can just try it out. So if you're still a bit like, I'm not quite sure I got all of this down, then have a go at practically doing some where I'm going to put down particular chord progressions and then some alternatives that you can try with the capo, ways of putting it into practice right away. Common chord progressions that you're likely to find in lots of different songs. I might even hint at some songs that might use that kind of thing that you might want to try a practical application of. I do actually even have some lessons on exactly this sort of stuff, like Wildflowers by Tom Petty. What's that beautiful Traveling Wilburys song? I can't remember it right now. On the website, again, check. I'm going to put a list of some all-time classic songs that use this very technique. And that, again, would be a wonderful thing. A wonderful way of putting this into practice is jamming along with the original recordings, but experimenting with where you put the capo, trying out these different chord shapes and seeing how they blend together. It really is super, super duper fun. I'm really hoping you're going to enjoy it. I'm also going to leave you now with a little backing track of me just playing the C, the G, C, and D progression. That's 2 bars of G, 1 bar of C, and 1 bar of D. So do try out all of those different capo positions and see how it works for you putting the capo at the 3rd fret, the 5th fret, the 7th fret, and the 10th fret, and just try the different sounds so you can play along with me. I'll leave the click up as well so you can get a good grounding of that. I think that should be a really good kind of interim one if you haven't got a jam buddy, but please do try and find someone to jam with if you can, because it is such a much more rewarding experience. That was a whole lot of talking. I hope all of that made sense. If you've got any questions, let me know in the comments, either on YouTube or the website. If you're over on YouTube, really appreciate you hitting that subscribe button and the bell if you want to get notified when I've got new lessons. You know the drill, but loads more stuff on the website, so do go and check it out. This is, of course, the beginning of the Grade 3 new series, new for 2022. You might be watching this in 2032. Who knows if it's going to last that long? But this is, really exciting adventure for advancing beginners, bridging the gap between easy open chords and simple strumming and bar chords and 16th notes and all that stuff that we get into in the intermediate grades. It's going to be loads of fun. I'm really excited about this. There's so many cool things coming up, so I really hope you'll dig in on it. It's all over on the website. Just go and check it out. You find it in the menu system under Grade 3. I'll see you for plenty more very soon. You'll take care of yourselves. Much love. Bye-bye.